Is COVID making a comeback? Taiwan grapples with a jump in cases. After a Chinese man on a speedboat gets past Taiwan's Coast Guard, is the country's maritime security up to scratch? Fishers reeling from the after effects of an earthquake plead for help. Plus, as India tries to become the world's third largest economy, we take an exclusive look at the site where it's going to build its very first semiconductor plant. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Ian Kavat. COVID cases are spiking in Taiwan, with 20 deaths linked to the disease reported in the last week. Health officials are urging the public to be on alert and get updated vaccines. Reese Ayres joins us live from Taipei with the latest. Reese, is COVID making a comeback?
Well, let's hope not, Ian. COVID hasn't really been in the collective consciousness at all here in Taiwan for quite a while. But the number of deaths and serious cases recently seems to be high enough to have pushed the Center for Disease Control to make a public announcement. Now, over the past week, we've seen about 328 cases recorded that have caused serious complications. That's up 25% from the previous week. Included in those numbers are two one-year-old boys who have developed dangerously high fevers, and as you mentioned there, 20 COVID-related deaths. Health officials are urging people to get the updated vaccines. They say that the previous older vaccines may not be as effective against the newer strains of the virus.
Reese, are we expecting any kind of action from the government in terms of mask mandates or other measures?
Well, no news of mandates or lockdowns just yet. The CDC is unlikely to take such extreme measures so quickly, particularly seeing as it was just about 3 or 4 weeks ago that the last of the mask mandates were lifted here in Taiwan. That was for hospitals and health centers. But even still, people around Taiwan continue to wear their masks, particularly on public transport after the recent COVID-19 pandemic and after also the SARS outbreak in the early 2000s. People in this part of the world are generally a bit more attuned to public health and the efficacy of wearing masks. When COVID first broke out, Taiwan had some of the strictest border controls in the world. It largely shut down foreign nationals or visitors coming into the country, and those that could come in had to do 14-day quarantine periods. Now, for us living in Taiwan, that meant that we could continue leading relatively normal lives, though it's not a situation that any of us are hoping we'll have to face again.
Let's hope not. Thanks for the updates, Reese. That was Reese Ayres reporting from Taipei. Taiwan's top security officials say there are still doubts over the motive of a Chinese man that used a speedboat to land near Taipei. The incident has led to a debate on whether there are gaps in the country's defenses. The question now is what Taiwan can learn from seeing its territory breached so easily. Jaime Ocon reports.
This is the moment a man from China was captured by police after crossing the Taiwan Strait in a speedboat and landing near one of Taiwan's largest ports. He's since been identified as a former Chinese Navy captain. The Coast Guard says human negligence is the reason the boat managed to make it to Taiwan shores. 10 people in the Coast Guard have already been disciplined, and the administration says more resources will be dedicated for surveillance to monitor more ships.
这个案子是风险非常高，威胁程度非常高，应该在第一时间要调派线上艇去实施拦截，结合雷达跟红外线，看到我们就可以确定。
The incident is triggering concerns over possible gaps in Taiwan's defense. The country faces daily harassment from Chinese ships, aircraft, and balloons, all part of Beijing's efforts to bring Taiwan under its control.
Taiwan's position is so unique where every day there is a new threat, whether it's in the cyber domain, from the air, from the sea. And frankly, Taiwan doesn't have the same amount of resources, funding, manpower, personnel that China does.
But the bigger concern is the location this man managed to reach, as the Danshui estuary is critical to the country's defense. Danshui is home to one of Taiwan's largest ports and houses military facilities along its riverbanks. Just a few kilometers away sits the country's largest international airport. It's an ideal landing spot for a potential invasion from China, especially as the river connects all the way to the capital city of Taipei. Taiwan's military has practiced defending this beach, but analysts say establishing more advanced radar stations and better surveillance training needs to be prioritized.
Catching incidences is going to be possible given enough time, but increasing the resources, being able to expand the number of radar stations, getting it operationalized would be an enormous cost. And I think in Taiwan's situation, we're talking about a zero-sum game for defense funding.
With little information known about the origin of the speedboat and this man's motivations to land on Taiwan shores, this could very well be a unique situation. But given how easy Taiwan's territory was breached, it's a reminder for the armed forces here to be alert at all times.
What needs to happen is to not let this one incident derail years of defense reform and possibly trying to completely change how things are. Like this, granted, it's a lot easier for one guy to slip through than an entire Navy or an entire Coast Guard or an entire Army.
While both the military and the Coast Guard continue to patrol Taiwan's waters, it's gray zone threats like this small boat that may pose the biggest problems. Now it's up to the country's armed forces to adapt to this new reality, where all ships, no matter the size, pose a threat. Andy Shui and Jaime Okan for TaiwanPlus.
A major earthquake that hit eastern Taiwan in April didn't just affect those on land. Fishers near the quake's epicenter are also facing major losses, grappling with expensive repairs to damaged equipment. They're now calling for more support from the government to help them rebuild. Wesley Lewis has the story.
Picking up the pieces, fishers in Hualien in eastern Taiwan are removing damaged equipment from their stock. A massive magnitude 7.2 earthquake that hit the region in April has left the local fishing industry in shambles. Fishers say the quake shifted the anchors they use here to tie off fixed fishing nets.
那边有绑那个石块，然后这个就是因为地震嘛，然后就滑了，它就跑边，它就变成全部拉下去了。 网子就被扯破了。
There are 8 designated fisheries along Hualien's coast. The local government says the fishing sector has lost over $1 million due to earthquake damage. They now plan to give every affected fishery around $9,000 in relief funds. But fishers say the government subsidy is just a drop in the ocean.
其实的话，你如果说要分摊给8家业者的话，其实对他们来讲的话，那是属于慰问金而已啦。真的，那些钱的话没有，真的是不够啦。
Local authorities in Hualien say they've asked the central government for more support.
补助的额度啦，相较于我们损失实在差异太大，所以我们花莲县政府持续的跟中央积极的争取了。农业部已经修订了就是农业灾害补助的办法，那目前还可以额外再补助大约25万元。
Hualien's fisheries don't expect to complete repairs until the end of the summer, peak fishing season for several important catches, including skipjack tuna and flying fish. As local fishers mend their nets, they are hoping their government will deliver more aid so they can get back to business as usual. Devin Tai and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
Hong Kong is cancelling the passports of 6 activists who are living in exile in the UK. They include former pro-democracy lawmaker Nathan Law and activist Fin Lau. Hong Kong Security Bureau says it's using its powers under a new national security law. It said the 6 activists continue to engage in activities that endanger national security. Nathan Law said he gave up his passport when applying for asylum in the UK and that the move was redundant. Hong Kong police had already put the 6 on a wanted list last year. The UK and other countries where activists have fled say Hong Kong is trying to silence opposition voices. South Korea has revealed that it fired warning shots towards North Korea on Sunday after the North soldiers briefly crossed the border. Its military says the soldiers retreated northwards after the shots were fired and warnings were broadcast. South Korea says it believes the soldiers didn't intentionally cross the forested border and may have been lost. The incident comes amid heightened tensions between North and South Korea. India's Prime Minister has promised to lift the country from the world's 5th to its third largest economy in the next 5 years. And one way he aims to do that is through heavy investment in technology, namely chips. Sally Ensign went to the site where the country's first semiconductor plant will be built, where high hopes are pinned on a bright future for India.
Wake up to your dreams. A promotional video extols the untapped potential of a dynamic new high-tech city, the future of India. This is what the local government of Dholera envisions, ambitious plans for a 920 square kilometre piece of land in the middle of the western state of Gujarat. This area is vast, arid and home to few people, but it's set to house the country's first semiconductor manufacturing plant, or chip fab.
They will start the construction very soon, maybe in next 3 months. They will start the actual construction, and the fab will be ready for commissioning in 2026.
The Dholera plant, which will cost around $11 billion to build, is a collaboration between India's Tata conglomerate and Taiwan's power chip semiconductor manufacturing company, or PSMC. The local government here is eager to show us how this chip manufacturing hub is developing, and with reason, because once this whole place is completed, it'll be the key to India achieving its ambitious goal of becoming a high-tech economic powerhouse. That's as Prime Minister Narendra Modi, recently elected to a third term in office, plans to push India 2 spots to become the world's third largest economy.
वो समय दूर नहीं जब भारत दुनिया का ग्रीन एनर्जी हब होगा, फार्मा हब होगा, इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स हब होगा, ऑटोमोबाइल हब होगा, सेमीकंडक्टर हब होगा.
He aims to harness manufacturing and high-tech industry, like semiconductors, to reach that goal. The Tata PSMC plant would produce 22-nanometer chips, which function as the brains of modern electronics. The local Gujarat government hopes that the new plant will attract other tech companies to set up shop here. But they have to assure investors that there's enough reliable power for the energy-intensive chip-making industry.
In case anyone down, so second source is allowed, no interrupted for any chances.
Taiwanese chip giant TSMC has faced challenges in its ventures abroad, most notably when setting up in the US in the desert state of Arizona, since making semiconductors requires massive amounts of water. This experience raises questions about whether chip fabs in similarly dry Dholera will consume more than they produce.
We have already built in almost all the consideration for the environment, for the ecology, and the region is little swamp. We have taken care of that also. This part we have already built in our overall planning for Semicon City.
The local government has high hopes that once completed, the new hub will snowball, attracting more foreign investment and become India's city of the future. For now, the Dholera Semicon vision remains just that, until this patch of dry land blooms and a new centre of tech for the country is born. John Su, Suvan Pal and Sally Ensign in Gujarat, India for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up after the break, hundreds of dead catfish, they're being hunted down. Stay tuned to find out why.
Everyone's using AI to solve all their problems now. It's convenient and fast, but what if it's leading us all down the same generic path? If I want to get to know a place, is AI really the best guide? Look, all I'm saying is I don't want to see another recommendation to try stinky tofu. I'm trying to experience Taiwan for real. People live entire lives we know nothing about, and that's why I'm going in to make a personal connection. Through that process, I may spark joy or even get in trouble. But as my grandpa always tells me, if you can't behave, be careful.
Ooh, it's really ticklish.
I'm Brandon, an influencer and comedian based in Taiwan. Join me on my adventures and I'll show you a new side of Taiwan. We're sure to have some laughs along the way.
For Real with Brandon O'Neill. Every Thursday, 8:30 p.m. on TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus News. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, visit our website or follow our social media. Let's go!
To have a place where you're appreciated for you exactly as you are as an LGBT person is really, really special.
Crazy, fun, but educational because this is all for one cause. And the cause is gender diversity for this year, correct?
We have so many different categories that we excel at.
Oh my God! I am beyond thrilled!
Being myself is enough. Like, they chose you obviously for a reason.
You can just celebrate your lives, celebrate yourself.
Welcome back. You're watching Taiwan Plus News. President Lai Ching-te has approved a cabinet request for a fresh review of controversial legislative reforms. The cabinet says the new rules may be unconstitutional or hard to enforce. Supporters of the bills say they're needed as part of a push to reform the legislature and give it more oversight over the executive branch. But opponents worry about new powers like compelling people to give testimony. The legislature now has 15 days to vote again on the amendments. If they're passed, that would force President Lai to sign them into law. But the reforms can still be challenged in the Constitutional Court. For a deeper look at what may lie ahead in the fight over expanding legislative powers, John Van Trier spoke to Professor Liu Zhaolong, whose areas of expertise include Taiwanese politics.
What's the difference substantially between sending a law back to the legislature for review and the veto power that presidents in some other countries have?
对于这个预算案、条约案等等有窒碍难行的时候，它可以请立法院复议。那复议的话，其实只要过半就可以。那过去57条的规定来讲的话是2/3更难。那现在增修条文只要过半就行了。那过半来讲的话，我们观察目前立法院的生态结构，要维持这个复议失败的造成复议失败这个结果是可以想见的。
Is it common for Taiwanese presidents to send a law back for review?
非常少见，因为台湾我检查过，台湾总共使用过13次而已。从1950年代之后到现在，总共才只有13次。某个角度来讲，复议权的失败也形同是对行政院长的暗示性不信任投票。那在欧洲国家可能就是直接就是解散国会重选，要不然就是倒阁，要不然就直接下台都有可能。那可是台湾在这个部分的规定是比较模糊的。
So if this law still ends up passing, but it gets sent to the Constitutional Court, does that mean that there's a sort of pause button hit, or is the law still in force?
有2个问题，第一个问题是说，今年9月有一半的大法官要重新行使同意权，9月份有一半的大法官任期到要行使同意权，那这个案子要怎么处理，也涉及到一个问题啊。第二个是，通常来讲，一个宪法的解释案，你要在3个月内去做出来的话，那个时间压迫性是蛮高的，而且又是这么充满政治性的案子。
Once again, that was Professor Liu Zhaolong discussing the ongoing political fight in Taiwan over expanding the power of the legislature. Hunter Biden, the son of US President Joe Biden, has been found guilty on all counts in his federal gun trial. Rosie Grenenja reports.
Hand in hand with his wife and First Lady Jill Biden, US President Joe Biden's son Hunter leaves federal court in Delaware a convicted felon. A jury found him guilty of 3 felony charges related to a gun he purchased in 2018. Those include falsifying paperwork to buy a gun and unlawfully possessing the weapon for 11 days while being a drug user.
Hunter Biden was convicted of 2 counts of lying on a form submitted to a federal firearms dealer about his addiction or use of crack cocaine, and possessing a firearm while a user or addict.
Hunter's defense team argued that he was not using drugs at the time of purchase and did not knowingly violate the law. But he now faces a maximum sentence of 25 years in jail. But while prison is a possibility, legal experts say for a first-time offender, probation is more likely. Hunter has responded to his verdict, saying he's disappointed by the outcome but grateful for the love and support of his family and friends. It marks the first time in US history the child of a sitting president has been convicted of a crime.
No one in this country is above the law. Everyone must be accountable for their actions, even this defendant.
President Joe Biden embraced Hunter after flying to Delaware. But earlier at a gun safety summit, he did not address the verdict, instead saying in a statement that he loves his son and will accept the outcome of the case and the judicial process. The campaign of his presidential rival, Donald Trump, responded to Hunter's verdict, saying the trial has been nothing more than a distraction. It's the second guilty verdict to rock the US election campaign in 2 weeks, after likely Republican candidate Trump was convicted of 34 counts of falsifying business records to influence the 2016 election. Trump is continuing to rally against that guilty verdict, saying he's the victim of a rigged justice system.
I think this will pose a contrast. I can say this for the public, and they should see the contrast between one person wanting to blow up the justice system and the other person accepting it at the pain of his own family.
Democrats are expected to seize on this verdict to counter Donald Trump's claims of a justice system that's been weaponized against him. But Hunter Biden's legal troubles don't end here. He'll face a trial for tax evasion in September before being handed his sentence for these gun charges, expected before the US presidential election in November. Dolphine Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Rescue workers are evacuating thousands of stranded people as heavy rains flood Chile. Torrential rains and hurricane-force winds swept across the southern Biobío region, leaving hundreds of homes damaged. Authorities reported flooded streets and homes, landslides and fallen trees, and have issued a red alert for the entire region. They've also issued an early warning for Chile's capital city, Santiago, as more rain and wind is expected over the next few days. More than 7.1 million animals have been killed by extreme weather in Mongolia. This year's Zud, a weather phenomenon that occurs when heavy snow freezes over dry ground, has wiped out more than a tenth of the country's livestock. Frozen pastures brought by the Zud made it impossible for the country's nomadic herders to graze their flocks. Livestock is a core driver of Mongolia's economy and represents about 11% of its GDP. Zuds used to occur about once every 10 years, but climate change is making them harsher and more frequent. Police believe an electrical fault is to blame for a fire that killed more than 1,000 caged animals at a market in Bangkok. The fire at Chatuchak Market spread to more than 100 stalls in the market's pet section. The tightly packed market is a popular spot for tourists. But animal activists have raised concerns about the sale of live animals there, prompting periodic raids targeting sellers of endangered species. Volunteer fish hunters in Malaysia have signed up to help deal with an invasive South American catfish species taking over the country's rivers. Harel Hughes reports.
A gruesome sight along the rivers of Malaysia, but one that has become necessary. This fish, referred to as the bandaraya or janitor fish, has taken over the country's rivers. And a group of volunteer fish hunters is working to change that.
Kalau kita tak buat aktiviti macam ni, saya rasa sungai kita akan rosak lah. Korang nak mancing ikan apa lagi? Dah tak ada apa dah nanti. Ikan patin pun boleh pupus. Ikan lampam pupus. Ikan talapia pun kita dapat sikit je hari ni. Semuanya bandar raya. Boleh katakan 95% bandar raya kot.
The bandaraya is a type of catfish. Its native habitat is on the other side of the Pacific.
Ikan bandaraya ni saya lebih suka sebut sebagai ikan pleko ataupun nama saintifiknya Pterygoplectis. Kalau di Malaysia kita dapati dia dah menjarah sungai-sungai dan ekosistem kita. Ada 3 spesies yang berasal dari Sungai Amazon, Amerika Selatan. Sebenarnya dia datang sebagai ikan hiasan.
Experts suspect the catfish were bought as pets, then later released into rivers. But without a natural predator, they have taken over, competing for food and eating smaller clams and fish, and disrupting fishing activities. There are at least 300 volunteer fish hunters around the country, and more keep signing up. They have a simple message for aquarium owners.
Tolonglah, jangan buang dekat sungai-sungai kita, dekat longkang, jangan. Kalau boleh, musnahkan. Sebab ikan ni dia tak ada value pun untuk masyarakat kita dekat Malaysia ni. Sebab ikan ni akan memusnahkan ekosistem ikan air tawar kita.
Bandarayas are not considered good for eating, and researchers are hoping to find a different use for all the captured fish. A task that will only become more necessary as the fish hunters call on more volunteer janitor fish janitors to clear out and restore their river ecosystems. Patrick Chen and Harel Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, check out these Humboldt penguins in Chile. They're the most at-risk penguin species in the world. I'm Kavat. Take care. See you next time.